Some people collect baseball cards, some collect beer cans, others collect stamps or audio recordings. Robert Tobin collected almost anything and everything related to theater arts. Linda Hardberger, the first curator of the Tobin Collection, says Robert Tobin and those who oversee the collection had to define some parameters in building on Tobin's earliest acquisitions.
Because this is can be a very vastly growing collection, and there's a finite amount of space, that there is sort of a base for what's collected. It has to be either musical theater, and that can be opera or musicals, or classical, which would be pap. We don't do drama, just because that's the only way you figured out to cut it out. And we don't, unfortunately, do anything it's mostly Eurocentric or American-centric. We don't do anything in Asian or, theater in that area, which of course is very rich, or Africa. But it just got to be too cumbersome.
Robert Tobin's collection began innocently enough, I suppose, while he was a student at UT Austin.
I mean, the story is, and he told it, so I guess I can retell it. But his mother took him to Dallas to see an opera, and he fell in love with the whole concept. Wanted to actually be a designer, and worked at it a little bit and tried it, and it didn't work very well. He wasn't very good at it. So at UT, he started studying the history of scene design, since that's what he cared about. And he had to write a paper. The Rare Book Library, at that point, had a copy of a set of portfolios of images from the Viennese Theater Museum. And he wanted that, but they wouldn't let him check it out. He had to use it there. So he, being the kind of person he was, went to a rare book dealer, an antique book dealer, and said, find me this set. So he did, and that was the beginning of that. We actually have that set. It's here. So that was the beginning, and he decided, this is really terrific. And so he started buying stuff at a great rate. And his mother would buy him pieces for his birthdays. And then at that point, Mrs. Tobin became a member of the board of the Metropolitan, and there was Eugene Berman was designing for them, and they got to know Eugene Berman, and things went on from there. And Robert knew a lot of the designers, certainly in the 20th century, that he bought, so that was of particular interest to him.
Jody Blake, the current curator of the Tobin Collection of Theater Arts, says the collection is broad in its range, both within the context of historical span and the varieties of materials collected.
The collection really goes from around 1500 until yesterday. I don't think we literally have anything from yesterday, but we place great emphasis as we continue to build on the collection with being current. Robert Tobin's first gift to the McNay was actually the Rare Book Collection, which includes the earliest material. The plates, the prints, the wonderful engravings that were created to document the courtly festivals that were really the ground in which opera and ballet were created in Italy and throughout Europe in the late Renaissance and the Baroque period.
Some of the earliest Roman theaters were outdoor, sometimes in the form of towers. A wonderful color plate in the Tobin collection shows a multi-level tower populated by actors and perhaps public figures at every level. You can see this woodcut with hand coloring as part of a slideshow online right now at tpr.org. The illustration from 1496 cries out for musicians, especially wind players so accustomed to outdoor performance. A bit of Gabrielli will surely do. The play, a musical play, L'Orfeo, by the great Italian innovator Claudio Monteverdi. The muse sings, "I am music," and in her tuneful way reminds us that music is meant to be sung. This also reminds us that theater becomes more than just drama when you add the musicians. This is what appealed to Robert Tobin and to his mother, Margaret Batts Tobin. Linda Hardberger tells us of one of Robert Tobin's richest passions, the collecting of so-called festival books.
Well, we have, I think, one or two incunables, which is just at the first 100 years of printing, which is starting in the 1400s. And it goes all the way up to the present. The span, the subject matter deals mainly with really anything that has to do with scene design or costume design, but it's very, very broad because there's books of architecture. We've got all the 10 Piranesi books. They do now. And then we have lots of festival books, and those are the really magical pieces. In the 17th and 18th centuries, they would do festivals, each royal house. And for those who weren't there, they would print these very, very elaborate programs with illustrations and the story of the play and what they ate and everything. It was just a sort of a compendium of what the festival was about. And then they would send those to people who were not able to come. It was a way to say, look at me. We really did a great partying. Sorry you missed it. But it was also a way for people who did come to have a souvenir of the event. And in those events, they were always theater productions. And so many of these have illustrations of set and costume designs. So that's their big forte.
Scholars come from far and wide to study various aspects of these festival books. For example, the music, which is notated within, and in some cases, there's even instruction on the dance steps. Jody Blake explains.
Yes, I'm immediately thinking of books that are not only music but dance notation of Lully. I mean, that came to my mind immediately because it has that added component of the dance notation, which is, and I'm not sure if dance historians have used our books in particular, but it just adds another aspect to the value of them. And as well as festival books. Again, I'm thinking of Lully. I'm such a Francophile that, immediately the court of the Sun King is of great interest to me.
Music from the court of Louis XIV. We heard dance movements from the pen of Jean-Baptiste Lully. I'm James Baker, and this is part one of a 5-part series exploring the musical side of Robert Tobin's remarkable collection of theater arts. In a moment, we'll press the boundaries of theater music. I recently spoke to McNay director Dr. William Kiego about the importance of the Tobin Collection residing at the McNay.
Well, Robert was involved with the museum from when he was really a teenager. I think he did his first exhibition here when he was 19 or 20. And so his involvement with the McNay and his friendship with John Leeper, our first director, was very important to his giving to the museum. And he was, we all know, a devoted collector of scene and costume designs, which began when he was a boy. He loved opera, he loved theater, and I guess more than anything, he liked the combination of art, visual arts, music, and drama, in whether it's opera, ballet, or American musical stage, or straight drama. These were all things that fascinated him, and he liked that bringing together of things. So his gifts really began, in a sense, with the first shows that he did here. But he gave not only theater arts, he gave many other works of art to the museum over the years. And when his mother paid for the building of the Tobin Library, that's when he started making gifts of the theater arts collection, and then kept making gifts over the years. And in the years before he died, decided to make a gift of the totality of his theater arts collection, which he did in part before he passed away, and then left instructions that the rest of it should come to the museum after his death. So it was a 5-part gift, and I'm sure Linda must have talked about, of different sections of the collection. And it was very, he was really happy that the museum would be the repository of his theater arts collection, because he had done so many exhibitions here from that collection over the years.
I recently read an article by Robert Tobin in which he remarked with a certain light-hearted glee upon the debate of what is theater music. He recounted the impassioned concern with which the National Endowment of the Arts debated creation of a new category of music theater. Mr. Tobin then observes that the newly approved term was promptly misread as musical theater. Whatever you might call it, theater music, music theater, or musical theater, Robert Tobin was interested in collecting it. I asked Ben Stevenson, artistic director of the Texas Ballet Theater, how he would define music or musical theater.
I think musical theater, to me now, it could be one of many things, but as I think of it, it would be musicals. For instance, a story that you put music to. And, of course, it's a much wider thing now. You could have choreography involved. You could have a lot of dancing. You could have none. But it's something that involves music and theater. So somehow it's like a play that has music that goes with it. And sometimes you add dancing. I look at it like that, really. So it's, and it's got such a wide thing. Someone could now, write, because quite often, with Andrew Lloyd Webber, really, his shows are like operas, really. They go on and on with, singing through the whole thing. So somehow it's more like an operetta, but it's sort of musical theater. Or then you get something like Wicked, or, some of those news, the Book of Mormon, which I think is hysterical. Those things are, have songs, but are a play with songs and sometimes dance. That's how I look upon it. It's got a much wider term now than just an operetta. Because really, I think that Broadway is very much influenced more by things like Oklahoma and those things. We've sort of come forward from there, really, and sometimes got more daring than that. But it's still a show that has a story, South Pacific, all those things. And then, you go and see Wicked, and it has Into the Woods. I like it when the story and the songs continue the story. So you don't have a story going along and then suddenly there's a song that has nothing to do with the story but has a very nice song. So somehow I think that it's nice when you have these wonderful people, but to Sondheim and people who can write the play into the music in a way, so somehow it continues through the songs.
And now, to play devil's advocate, I must ask the question of whether musical theater, that of the Broadway variety, belongs alongside costumes and set designs for operas by Mozart or ballets to music by Rimsky-Korsakov. Conductor Maurice Paris, who conducted the premiere of Leonard Bernstein's Mass back in 1971, definitely has an opinion.
There are a lot of people who resent or think that you can't be a great symphonic composer if you write for Broadway. What a crock that is. You could take that word out. But you know what I'm saying? That's nonsense. Gershwin wrote for Broadway, and he gave us some of the greatest pieces of the history of American music. So I find that kind of apartheid. There's high-quality music. No. My whole philosophy, my first book is called Dvorak to Duke Ellington. And so my whole senses, my whole experience, my knowledge is that the connection between the popular world and the so-called serious world, the classical world, is immensely tight. And these people know each other. They worked with each other. The crossover is infinite. So I think the dividing of it, or to try to segregate it in any way, it's unlawful. It shouldn't be allowed. People have to grow up and get over that.
An overview in this first of a 5-part series searching for musical illustrations of the remarkable Tobin Collection of Theater Arts at San Antonio's McNay Art Museum. Is it rare books? Yes. Illustrated dance steps? Yes. Opera? Even contemporary opera? Yes. Musical theater? Yes, yes, yes. On next week's program, we visit the hotbed, which was Paris from 1909 through Serge Diaghilev's death in 1929. All the Rage in Paris, Diaghilev's Ballet Russe, is currently on display at the McNay. The images and music will come together in Part 2 of the Tobin Collection, A Musical Vision.